Hey guys, Chaotic Hammer here with another Hell Let Loose update video talking about the upcoming Update 18. Now, even though the update comes out tomorrow on all platforms, the changelog did drop today, which outlines everything that should be coming in tomorrow's update. A lot of big ticket items such as the Stalingrad refresh, the armor rework, and just a bunch of little things in between that we're going to dive into in this video. And I do want to have a quick disclaimer. There's a lot in this update that I'll need to talk about, and some of it I cannot do justice in this video. So some things I will be separating for other videos, whether it be because it warrants its own video or because I actually had plans for a video in the case of one thing we'll get to, and I'd rather just wait to put it in that video instead. So keep an eye out for some videos in the future outlining in more detail some of the items on this changelog. But let's dive into the Stalingrad refresh now. Now, the way the Stalingrad rework essentially was very similar to the Purple Heart Lane rework, in which the map needed to be reworked for whatever reason, whether because it just wasn't that good of a map, it wasn't popular, or stability in the case of Stalingrad. Stalingrad, to most of us, is known as Stalingrad because it would constantly crash your game for whatever reason. It was one of the most unstable maps in the game, and the devs decided to work on it and make it a refreshed map, with things including balancing the HQs, new roads, terrain adjustments, destruction pass-through, new lighting scenarios, addressing floating assets, and just in general updating the map, as well as setting up a skirmish game mode for it and making a bunch of different weather types for the map itself. Now, in terms of just things that they added, I'll at least give a brief list and show some photos on screen of some of the changes coming. In terms of new bridges, changes to the roadways, new buildings, removal of some buildings, more train cars, stuff like that. Every objective got some sort of rework, including the HQs as well, like I've already mentioned. Now, I could break down every single objective, but that would take way too much time, and I want to probably do that for a separate video, so keep an eye out for that. On top of that, we have other things like day overcast, morning overcast, dusk, night, that type of thing, as well as skirmish mode being unveiled for Stalingrad itself. But overall, from what I could see from these photos and going into the explore mode, there was some changes made, even if some of them aren't noticeable right now. Next, we have the long-awaited armor changes, and I bet a lot of people are excited about this. Now, with the tank changes in the changelog, there is a lot here, and although they did say they were going to change a lot of things, such as maybe things with like gun velocity and take things like that into account, it seems like they did, but they still wanted to keep it as balanced as possible. And I'll throw some charts up here to explain this. So at least what they have here is that they broke down a bunch of charts with a bunch of stats. Anything in green was a technical buff, anything that was red was a nerf, and anything that's gray is remaining unchanged. Now, once again, we'll break this down in a separate video, but things like yaw rate or pitch rate, such as for the turret traverse, as I understand it, the angle of the gun for its elevation depression, hull health, turret health, mobility, such as so on and so forth. And they break it down for all the factions, from America to Germany to the Soviets to the British. And there's a lot to digest, but other things like arm-piercing damage and HE damage will also be taken into account for terms of things like tank health, as there's a total health pool that, to be fair, I didn't even realize was actually really a thing until this changelog came out. So things like that have all been slightly altered or changed to make tank combat in general look like it more fluid, and in general just changing it up to see what happens. The Jumbo 75 Sherman for the Americans, as arguably one of the worst tanks in the game, also had some changes in line to make it more like an anti-infantry tank. It's going to be at least at 500 fuel, at least if we're going off the charts. An HE round is a lot better with a decrease in reload speed, and just in general, hopefully it'll be more appealing as an option. Although you only have access to 2 heavy tanks per faction now on the battlefield. You can't field any more than 2 now, which is a big thing that they did make note of in the last changelog, but also just in general, the whole thing with that is to make it a heavy breakthrough and to make it rare on the battlefield. You can still have a bunch of mediums, lights, and everything else, but heavy tanks are going to be a little more on the rare side, especially with cooldowns, such as when the tank is destroyed is when the cooldown will begin, to my understanding. On top of just tank changes in general to the general stats, They have also made terrain features a more prominent thing when navigating throughout the map, where the friction between certain forms of the ground will take into account your tank speed, such as maybe if you're on mud or snow, the terrain resistances will be a bit heftier, but if you're on a roadway or on regular grass, it won't be near as slow. Now, it doesn't seem like it's going to be that much of a difference for tank speeds, but it looks like it will play at least a slight part in it. So that's something that they have made an emphasis on in the changelog. Another big emphasis that they wanted to talk about with the tank physics system was just being able to go over trenches a lot easier and a lot cleaner, which it looks like they've tried to attempt in this video, and it looks very clean, at least to me. Obviously, we'll see how it looks in-game. That's something that they've been looking forward to as well. Next thing being the firing knockback force, in which when a tank fires its main turret, it now includes a slight recoil effect, so the tank itself will move in general. From there, we have things like contextual repairs, meaning that when you try to repair a tank, you didn't exactly have a choice in what you repaired. But now you will have a choice in what gets repaired first, whether there's something that takes a higher priority in your tank over what would normally happen. Whether you want to repair the hull first, the engine, the turret, or the tracks, you will at least have a choice now in going to a certain place and actually repairing what you want. That way, if you say maybe you want to get your tracks fixed and want to make a quick getaway, you can do that. Or get the turret back online to maybe make a last stand. Who knows? But that'll also be coming. And speaking of the heavy tank limitations, as I go down the list here, each team may field a maximum of 2 heavy tanks at any given time. Their buffs make them a significant threat to both armor and infantry. Taking one down requires strong coordination and resource investment. All the while, this limitation reinforces the importance of medium and light tanks throughout the match. The cooldown timer for all heavy tanks has been increased from 5 minutes to 10 minutes, preventing any early game strategies using a heavy tank. So tanks like Panthers, Sherman Jumbos, IS-1s, Churchills, whatever, are now going to be really rare and very much a resource you do not want to waste. Because now they're going to be a lot longer to call back in if you lose one. So, commanders, keep that in mind. Moving on now to the anti-tank adjustments, they've essentially nerfed the rocket launchers for all factions in terms of damages. So now all the tanks take more damage, at least for the mediums and heavies. Light tanks still take 2 hits to destroy on the hull, but mediums now take 3, and heavy tanks will take 4 hits, on top of just the varying degrees of anti-tank rifle hits that you need for the other tanks as well as on there. Moving on from the AT changes, let's go into the technician loadout change, where crew members will now have the ability to take in a new loadout called the technician, to where they can basically be a half engineer, half crewman, and deploy things like barricades, repair stations, and a new deployable ammo depot, which will be able to refill tank shells in limited quantities. So that's big as well. You may not have to go back to HQ to refit as much. Still a little bit more to go over. Next up, we have the salvaging wreckage ability, where a new salvage mechanic allows infantry to remove vehicle wreckage from the map. Originally, you could just get rid of vehicle wreckages by shooting them with rockets or tank shells, but now there's a usefulness to not do that, in which by doing this, you can use a hammer to interact with a destroyed vehicle for a set duration, like you're building a barricade essentially, and clear the wreckage. And a portion of fuel will be returned to your commander. And this applies to both enemy and allied vehicles that can be performed by any player equipped with a hammer. And in conjunction with this, all recon loads have been given a hammer, allowing these units to salvage enemy vehicles in hostile territories before others can reach them. Meaning that recon teams, if they can get up to a wreckage, they can basically siphon fuel from the enemy and give it to your team behind the lines for tanks that maybe got destroyed at longer ranges. That is big for everything involved. In a slight pivot away from stats and stuff like that for tanks, we get into vehicle cosmetics that you can put on your tank. In conjunction with this, there is a DLC coming with new camos for tanks for the US and German tanks. Such as for the US, you have the Hell on Wheels Sherman and the Großdeutschland Panzer IV. These are just for the medium tanks, nothing for all the other tanks. But it's just a slight pivot for cosmetic stuff for those of you wanting to see a different color on your tank. It doesn't appear to be anything unrealistic. It just seems to be a different shade of camo, essentially. Nothing too big, but it's cosmetic. It doesn't have any actual effect on the game. So there's that. The last little tank changes here is just some audio changes, such as tank shell impact, volume level past the tank engine interior exteriors. Just some audio changes in general for the tanks. Moving on now from the tank changes, let's go into some new mechanics, such as the commander abilities. In this case, the artillery strike. And this is part 1 of part 2 of the artillery changes coming just to change the artillery meta, in which the commander can call an artillery strike and allows them to place up to 3 artillery clusters per turn on the battlefield. And each stack of the ability costs 100 munitions. And they just flatten an area that the commander can call in at the same time. It is unknown if they can destroy garrisons or anything like that. It'll need to be tested, but this is at least a preview of what is to come, and probably get rid of artillery and make it more for what people actually wanted as a call-in ability. We'll see how busted or balanced this actually is in-game, but at least it's a step in what looks to be a right direction for changing the artillery meta. Since we talked about all the major things, let's talk about the minor things in quick succession. Quality of life improvements, the ability to see both teams on the map within the admin camera. There you go. The invite only locked unit. You can invite people to your unit if you wish. If you are killed in action, the screen will look different. You'll have things like who killed you and what, or if you redeploy, you'll have a redeploy screen instead. So that got changed. The ADS FOV, people can adjust their field of view while aiming down the sights. So there is stuff like that. And it's not allowed to exceed the current base FOV value to prevent visibility exploits. There's also network connection icons for like packet loss, network latency, and strict NAC type, stuff like that. A slightly big thing here, though, is for support roles being able to pick up their supply box. Maybe, say, you messed up and you dropped your box too early, you can pick it up and get it back. There are some stipulations here, and I'll read through them. Only the player who placed them down can get them back up. Other team members cannot pick up the supply box. The supply box cannot be picked up in any of the supplies have already been used, but that is subject to change. This does not affect commander supply drops in any way, whether that from airdrops or supply truck drops. And if a percentage of supplies have been used, a portion of the cooldown is reimbursed to the player relative to the amount of supplies remaining. So my guess is if you do end up picking it back up and maybe there's 30 supplies left, you can get it maybe 3 minutes shaved off. Since it does take 5 minutes to get your supply box back, maybe if you get it back with some of your supplies, it cuts off how much of a minute is remaining. That's how I see it. Either way, support players can pick up their supply box if you misplace it. Last major thing here for Update 18 coming out tomorrow is that there is going to be the ability to have a supply marker ping out. This is part of a UI update. You can now mark enemy supplies. Instead of having to mark it with a garrison or an outpost, it actually has its own ping. So say maybe if a supply drop's coming in from the enemy commander, you can say, hey, enemy supplies are dropping there, and actually put a supply marker ping, saying, hey, there's not a garrison there yet, but there's going to probably be one soon. So it's just a little extra thing to maybe make things more clear on the battlefield and to maybe lessen confusion between officers. Other than that, though, besides the Red Army Cossack DLC, there really isn't much also just besides a community update revolving around some news with the Hell Let Loose dev team and maybe Hell Let Loose Vietnam, which I will try to keep an eye on myself. But other than that, just besides a couple of minor bug fixes in the changelog, which I will leave down below, that's pretty much it. Now, like I said, there will be some videos that I will come out as soon as I can, once I have the information, and get them out to you. I know I've been kind of lackluster on the channel lately, but keep an eye out for a lot of these videos for commander stuff, for the tank changes, the new map itself. I will try to get these out as soon as possible within the next couple weeks, hopefully within the next week or two. But hopefully you got something out of today's video, guys. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one.